The president also responded to the loss by signing a new executive order imposing a new 10% tariffs on all countries under a different statute. It all adds to the uncertainty for American businesses who have already paid a price for Trump's tariffs. MS Now's Maya Eaglin spoke with the owner of a fifth-generation family business about the impact of the tariffs that were just struck down.
Well, it was obviously a huge hit to our gross profit. Very concerning. We were really watching revenue very closely because if our revenue wasn't strong, it was going to be very hard for our business at that level of gross profit. Fortunately, we did have pretty good revenue in 2025, and it just created a lot of uncertainty.
If you had to kind of put a range on how much you all spent on these tariffs, do you have that number?
Several $100,000, yeah, well over $500,000.
Trump also suggested that the administration doesn't plan to refund businesses who paid for his tariffs because it's not addressed in the court's ruling. According to an estimate by Penn Wharton, more than $175 billion in tariff collections could be subject to potential refunds. Joining us now, Tim O'Brien, Bloomberg Opinion Senior Executive Editor, and an MS Now political analyst, and Courtney Brown, Senior Economics Reporter for Axios. Courtney, help us kick off this momentous morning. Are tariffs gone?
No, they were never going away. In fact, from Trump's comments yesterday, he almost sounded emboldened by the Supreme Court decision. He almost said, "Oh, you're going to tell me I can't do something? I might
exactly.
I might make these tariffs even more painful than they were before." Obviously, I'm paraphrasing, but that was the tone of his comments yesterday. No economist I spoke to expected tariffs to go away. What they were surprised by was how quickly the administration patched together a plan to replace them. That was the only surprise.
I think that's something that's so interesting about this. There's a few things, but one, tariffs and the usage of tariffs is something that Donald Trump believes in deeply. Like, it's one of his long-held beliefs way before he got into the political realm. And the creativity in which his team in Trump 2.0 has been able to find these random laws from years past and find these 16 words in this law where there's 2 words but they're separated by 16 words. It's it is a different administration in how they're operating. And Tim, I'm curious, as you look forward, as we see the kinds of ways in which this administration is going to try to circumvent, what the Supreme Court said, what are you most looking out for?
Well, I think, Eugene, the key thing here is that what they were trying to say was there was an emergency when emergency didn't exist. And that gave the president unilateral power to impose tariffs on our allies, on small island nations near the Arctic and across the board. It's also what he's tried to do with immigration. It's what he's invoked when he's attacked fishing boats off the coast of Venezuela. The tethering line in everything this administration's doing to give Trump unilateral powers is to declare an emergency. So one of the essential things that Roberts did in his ruling on tariffs was to say an emergency doesn't exist, essentially, and the president can't bend over backwards to invent one. And the dissenters on the court twisted themselves in knots to try to find some reason that Trump is still justified in doing this. And so it's very useful that the court said you can't declare an emergency when none existed. The second piece of this that's interesting of the Trump administration is this could be a face-saving moment for them. A lot of them have seen the problems that tariffs have visited upon average American consumers. It is indeed a tax. And we're going into the midterms with an affordability crisis afoot, and tariffs are part of that problem. And Trump can now say, well, I want to do this, but we're going to back off, and the Supreme Court took this away from me, manufacturing, MAGA workers, and therefore we have to let go of the tariffs. Unfortunately, Trump being Trump continues to do a cell phone and shoot himself in the foot.
They're trying to help him.
Here's
not letting them help you. Exactly.
Courtney, let's talk about affordability.
Please explain why you keep saying like that.
I keep saying it like Cartman from South Park because that's the way the president has been pronouncing the word affordability.
It's not how he really responds. He uses it.
So my big question is, oh, great, the Supreme Court said that these tariffs were unconstitutional. I bet most Americans who are watching, they're like, ooh, so am I going to get a refund? Hold on. Listen to what the Treasury Secretary had to say about it when he talked at the Dallas, where was he?
Economic Club of
Dallas. Dallas Economic Club of Dallas yesterday. Watch this. It's short.
Well, it's going to be a food fight going after $175 billion in it. So
I got a feeling the American people won't see it.
I got a feeling the American people won't see it. He's right. We are not going to get any kind of rebate check from anybody.
Yeah, I wouldn't wait by the mailbox for your check. There's no check coming directly to consumers.
Not even direct deposit?
Not even direct deposit. Don't sit refreshing your bank account either. It's not coming. It's actually unclear whether businesses who paid for the tariffs will actually get a refund, and if they do, when they get it. It could be years. Even President Trump admitted that it could be years down the line if they see anything at all. And what businesses then do with the money, especially the ones that said, I'm sorry to our consumers, we're going to have to raise prices because our cost of doing business has gone up tremendously. I'm not sure how they get that money back to the consumers. I think for the sake of ease, that's not something that will happen at all. Is there a small business on Main Street somewhere that decides, hey, we finally got our refund, we won't raise prices for this reason? Sure. But I highly doubt that Walmart is going to roll back prices a lot to account for whatever refund that may or may not come.
Not to be the armchair tariff expert for a day, but there is a little bit of precedent here, which is the harbor maintenance tax precedent in 1998 incidents that happened when SCOTUS actually turned down an export tax. It was not on this scale, as Courtney, you pointed out before the show, not anywhere close to this scale, but the government set up a system, and it was through the U.S. Court of International Trade overseeing the process. And a company would go through the process, and then they would get a refund through the U.S. Court of International Trade. I mean, it seems like, contrary to what Brett Kavanaugh has described as likely to be a mess, it seems like it could be relatively straightforward. But, Tim, is there any incentive for this administration to actually follow through and create some sort of easy-to-follow process here?
Well, if they want the $175 billion to wind up in boxes in Mar-a-Lago, it's probably not an incentive for them. But I'm with you, Jackie, on the idea that actually I don't think this is the kind of hurdle they claim it to be. Remember when Trump, over the past several months, kept bragging about how massive the tariff refunds or the tariff revenues were to the federal government. Those exist on ledgers, actually, at the Commerce Department. And Trump has promised that money on any number of occasions to make up for the Medicare costs, make up for some of the fallout from the big, beautiful tax bill, et cetera, et cetera. At one point, he promised, I think, a check for $1,000 to every American. And he made that all sound very easy and doable because, in all likelihood, there is a way to do this. And it's an amazing statement, I think, of disregard for the American public. And it's very arrogant when Scott Bessent says, no, you're just not going to see the money. Because the money exists within the federal ledgers. If they were interested in actually moving forward on this, they would. The other thing to highlight is it's not just their decision. Governor J.B. Pritzker of Illinois yesterday sent a blistering letter to the White House calculating how much every resident of Illinois has paid as a result of these tariffs and expected a refund to his constituents in the state of Illinois. And if the government wasn't going to provide it, he said he planned to take action to ensure that it did. So you could have a number of thousands of businesses and lots of states suing the federal government to get that money back. So if the Trump administration doesn't know how they're going to do it now, they better get busy figuring it out.